In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Brian Fry, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbardis, Nathan Lutz, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome all you lords, ladies and knights to the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to the show where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Russell Guest, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host from deep in the heart of Texas, Mr. Dustin Melbardis. How you doing, sir?
Good evening. I'm doing great. Extremely busy week and get to relax and talk about a fine old movie.
And for those of you who don't know, Dustin was my roommate in college, but before he was my roommate in college, Tommy Allen was my roommate in college, so it is a Russell's roommate special. Tommy Allen, how you doing, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
Coming to us from Biloxi, Mississippi, in your car, which is unusual. So the dedication, you will not have heard the sound check test, but Tommy Allen spent 30 minutes to get his sound right for this episode. So everybody, Tommy's hardcore.
Well, whatever you got to do to make it sound right. So here I am out in the car, but it'll be fine.
That's the kind of care that you're putting the care for our audience. So we thank you for that.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that made Braveheart one of our top 10 downloading episodes before when you were on that. So it's that dedication. You're the Willis Reed of podcasting.
Hopefully we'll get that many more viewers, and they'll go back and rewatch that one so we can make it the top episode, you know.
Tommy, Eddie Murphy is not only a gifted comedy actor, but he's also one of the best stand-up comedians ever. Who's your favorite stand-up comedian?
I guess I'd say Jim Carrey.
He is really good in the stand-up forum. That's a great selection there. Now, Dustin, who's your favorite stand-up comedian?
I'm going to go with Mitch Hedberg here, the late Mitch Hedberg. I think he paved the way for a lot of other stand-ups who focus on one-liners, like Dan Mintz, who is the voice of Tina on Bob's Burgers, and Dimitri Martin from, back when we were in college. I think that they kind of looked at Mitch Hedberg for inspiration there, and I think most of the people our age they have heard some of those one-liners before. I think he just stands out as someone from my past. It's like he's the best still for me.
Mitch Hedberg was taken from us too soon. He is one of my favorites. Maybe the only reason I have gone with this direction is recency bias, but John Mulaney is a very funny man, and he cracked me up, and he's probably become my favorite.
He's good. He's very good.
Now, Dustin, what movie are we going to cover today?
Beverly Hills Cop from 1984.
Had to do it.
Axel F. Yeah, the cover, Russell's cover version of Axel F.
I was just dancing to that. Somebody did a good remix of that at a Mardi Gras party.
It is catchy. It will be in your ear, and it has been in my ear all week for sure. I think I even texted Tommy being like, "This is definitely the earworm of the week for me." So
this movie technically came out like right when I was born.
It's 1984. It's budgeted for only $13 million, but it grosses $234.7 million, which is a lot of money for 1984. It's the number one movie in the box office that year. It comes in ahead of the movie Ghostbusters even. IMDb gives it a 7.3, and the critics of Rotten Tomatoes give it an 83%, audience score of 82%. It gets an Academy Award nominee for Best Original Screenplay. This is not the type of movie that I feel like the Academy would entertain for such categories today, but they did then. And the Golden Globe gave it nominees for Best Motion Picture for Comedy or Musical and Best Motion Picture Actor for Eddie Murphy. Again, it didn't win, but still, it's getting nominations at that level. And the BAFTAs also gave it a nominee for Best Score, and it was the People's Choice Award winner for Favorite Motion Picture, Stuntman Award for Best Vehicular Stunts, and the AFI gives us the praise of being on the top 100 funniest movies of all time and putting it at number 63. And this is the first of 7 movies in a row that Eddie Murphy puts out where he's number one in the box office. So he begins his Titan status of the 80s
Meteoric
here.
rise.
Yeah.
7? I did not know that. That's insane.
So Eddie
It's a
Murphy,
stranglehold on the box office.
Eddie Murphy is on fire.
You mentioned some sort of car scene? I mean, what were they got an award for
Best vehicular stunt at the Stuntman's Award.
vehicular stunt. Is that from the opening scene
I
where
would
they
think so.
It
Yes.
has to
take
be.
Yeah.
the take that that double trailered cigarette truck and start bashing it through all the streets of Detroit?
Yes.
And then that's when Eddie Murphy gets in trouble for they introduce you to him and his insubordination with Detective Todd. It's like the best relationship that you could have asked for, and how genuine it was. And I believe Detective Todd was a real police officer.
Yes, that's true. And it's even more amazing. It broke the first record weekend in the box office at the time. It took in $15.2 million in the first weekend. This was the highest R-rated grossing film in the United States all the way up until The Matrix Reloaded comes out. That's 19 years later as the number one grossing R-rated movie. Soundingly popular. Now, the film holds the record for selling the most rented titles on Betamax format.
Nice.
So for those of you who like Betamax, there's a good chance this is in your library.
Well, I mean, if you got this one, you got to have the trilogy. I mean, Now,
Tommy, obviously, you have seen this movie before, but what was your first time seeing it, and what was your experience coming to it?
I honestly couldn't remember, but I'm sure I was real young. I mean, my brother was older than I was, so he would always watch older kid movies, but I never really had a filter for any of that stuff. So I got to, watch or, sit in the background and watch movies like this when I was young. But I would always watch it with my cousins, and like we would just, act like Eddie Murphy a lot and joke around and use his lines. I might have actually saw the second one first. I mean, you got to think I was really young when this thing came out.
Yeah,
So
makes sense.
I probably saw the second one first, and then I went back and watched the first one to understand, okay, this is where all the stuff comes from. You got all kinds of stuff in that.
Obviously, this is one that you hold near and dear. So I take it it's aging well for you.
Aging well, of course, it will never not be on.
Yeah. Now, Dustin, had you seen Beverly Hills Cop?
I had seen Beverly Hills Ninja with Chris Farley, but I had actually never seen Beverly Hills Cop until 3 days ago. So I was once again lucky enough to have something introduced to me. Of course, I had heard about it, but I had not seen it. So, and I've seen it twice. I watched it 3 days ago, watched it again today before we started. A real pleasure to see.
Be great, because I'd love to hear what that's actually pretty cool that you've never seen it.
It's the best, man. Yeah.
Seeing it now, did it age well?
I think that's something that maybe we'll have time to talk about after the break, as far as things that aged well and did not.
Ooh, that's a tease. I see what you did there.
That was good. That was good.
I'm going to say that Tommy also introduced me to this movie, but it wasn't here at this podcast. I was, again, his roommate in college, and he talked it up. I actually did not get around to it until after we were no longer living together, but we were on a bus trip to go study architecture in Detroit. And so Tommy introduced me to Beverly Hills Cop trilogy, all three of them on the same very long bus trip from Knoxville to Detroit, there and back. I did think it was a lot of fun. Seeing a movie in a bus is not always the best atmosphere, but it was a lot of fun. And so Tommy's enthusiasm rubbed over to me and my wife, Mary. We were on this bus enjoying this, and I have seen it several times since then, but it has been a while now because I have put it down for a while. And it's funny because I watched them all back to back. They bleed together a ton for me, so it was fun to kind of come back and see what the first one is, because they all are very much amorphous, all melted into one to me. And now
you gotta, and it takes a while. You gotta like think back. You're like, was that the first or the second? Oh, okay, yeah, that was the first. All right.
Well, Tommy, here's another thing. I haven't seen the second or the third one either, so I get to dissect this movie on its own. So yeah, it's not just I have it by itself, so I'm only judging it by itself. But I will say I'm glad that you got introduced to it on a bus, because while it might not be the best atmosphere for a movie, it's about the only way to make a bus trip tolerable. is to watch a movie, especially if you have the rest of the trilogy ready to go. So good use of your time.
Yes.
There's some more stories to come about how Detroit relates back to this this podcast and Russell and the debauchery in Detroit that us as a class went through. We had a really good time though. It was that place was wild where we were staying. We're in Detroit of Mercy.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's a rough. The campus itself is fine because it's in a stone wall with like razor wire, like around a stone wall that runs around the outside of the campus. But the several blocks of commute to get to it is dicey.
Well, and the Burger King had like bulletproof glass, and you had to get your food through a little
turnstile.
Turnstile, and I was like, well, where are we at right?
I'm not one to be this way. Like, I'm not one to be like, wow, I don't trust the city that I'm in. But I was like,
when you're at Burger King getting your food through a turnstile.
Yeah.
Like, damn.
Even on the bus, I was sitting there going like, this is bad. Like, I mean, I've seen 8 Mile before, but this is like 8 miles of 8 Mile. Like, this is just an enormously long stretch of uncomfortable urban environment.
Well, it's like back in Knoxville, we just walk up to the Crystal. They had a walk-up window. Oh, hey, yeah, I'll take that, but no turnstile.
I did find myself being like, the bus has a lot of gas in it left, right? Like, I do not want to run out of gas. No flat tires. No.
Yeah.
So, no, that was an interesting trip. And moments after that, some fun stuff will happen here after the break. So we will be back after this messages. If you have not seen Beverly Hills Cop, there will be spoilers that lie ahead. So go check it out and come back and enjoy this. We'll be back after this.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
All right, we're back, and it is now time. There will be spoilers that lie ahead. So, Dustin, for those who have not seen Beverly Hills Cop since 1984, let's refresh people's memory here.
The cops pull up on an illegal cigarette sale in Detroit, resulting in an explosive chase through the crowded streets as our hero undercover cop Axel Foley hangs onto the back for dear life. Once the chase meets its conclusion, Axel is reprimanded by his superior officer for not playing by the rules. That very night, his best friend Mikey, fresh out of prison, pays him a visit only to be tracked down and killed for carrying smuggled Deutschmarks. Mikey's last conversation with Axel sends him to Beverly Hills to get some answers, where he meets Jenny, his old friend from childhood, who provides the details about a Victor Maitland who had employed Mikey before the incident. Axel moves fast, talks fast, and charismatically charms his way into and out of trouble with the local fuzz, particularly officers Taggart and Rosewood, before an unlikely alliance between them results in the discovery of an elaborate smuggling operation. Axel moves in too quick and without backup, but Billy Rosewood saves his life, while Taggart provides the needed support to storm the palatial home of Maitland, overwhelm the armed guards, get Jenny to safety, and bring about poetic justice for the murder of his friend.
All right.
Taggart and Roseweed. It's Rosemont, sir.
Super Cops.
Super Cops.
Or I guess it was Taggart and Rosewood. Taggart and Rosemont. It's Rosewood.
Now
it's Rosewood, right?
The chief
Chief gets his name wrong. Yeah,
he gets his name wrong, and the look on his face after he corrects him is just like where the lieutenant's just like, "Are you an idiot? Like, why would you have said that? Who cares what your name?"
So we teased it, so I'm going to go right there. Tommy, what happened in Detroit moments after watching Beverly Hills Cop?
Okay, so we went out in Detroit. I think we went to some casinos. We went down there, and I think you can see Canada from across the water, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the city. That's where we were at. Okay. So we went to these casinos. We got hammered, and me and a buddy were just roughhousing. My friend Andrew Holcomb. Shout out to Andrew Holcomb.
And freshman year,
Uh,
he like went through the wall of somebody's dorm into like
Not
literally,
me. I did not go
literally
through the
through
wall.
the
That
wall.
was not me. That was me. That was Craig. That was Craig with somebody, I thought.
Yes, it was like something
It
out of.
wasn't me.
Yeah,
I
okay.
did not go through the wall. But anyway, so me and Andrew were just like roughhousing, and I don't really know what happened. We were like shadow boxing or something, and I like turned around and then ran after him to like, I don't know, tackle him or something. And at that very minute that I turned around, he was doing like a shadow box roundhouse kick and just smashed my face with his foot. So
It was
in that morning, obviously everybody's just hungover. Oh my gosh, I think everybody was waiting on me. I think.
Oh yeah.
I was super late. It was like, if you are not here at the time the bus will leave you, and I'm over here scrambling, praying that I didn't forget anything.
We did not though. That was an empty promise. Yeah, we were on the bus for like 15 minutes and waiting for you and one other person to show up, and then when you came on, you had really big sunglasses, even though it was super cloudy.
I had a black eye, a busted lip.
Your eye was like red, like the white of your eye was like blood, like.
Yeah, you got shadow roundhouse.
Oh man, it was bad. And then
you sat down behind Mary and I on the bus, and I looked back at you, and I was like, "What's wrong with your lip?" And you took your glasses off, and you go, "Detroit is a very violent city."
which obviously for the listeners who have seen this movie, that's a line from this movie. When he goes in to talk to Victor, and he's talking about what Mikey had done for him as far as work goes, and he's like, sorry to hear about Mikey. Detroit is a very violent city.
Yeah.
So that line came from Beverly Hills Cop, and we just left it at that. I think I just sat in the chair not talking to anybody for like 30 minutes, and then
I was pretty concerned. I was like, did somebody do this to you? And you eventually did tell me, like, you were embarrassed about it. You were at that point, it's like, no, it was just me and Andrew. I was like, what?
Yeah.
So no.
Yeah.
But like you said, you were quiet. I was sitting there going like, did somebody mug you? For real? Like, because it was very believable where we were staying.
And we had all got back real late, and I mean, it was. But anyway, it was all just, looking back at it, how we can all laugh about it and how funny it was. I'm just happy I got back with all my stuff because I was so hungover. I can't remember, packing or anything.
Beverly Hills Cop is a lighter tone action comedy, and I feel like it does action and comedy in a really pleasant balance. And I think it's a hard formula to actually replicate because there are other action comedies. But Tommy, what makes this one work so well? What made people flock to the box offices and then connect with it and go tell their friends? And then it was explosive. What's the secret ingredient?
I honestly think everybody can relate to this is a poor Detroit cop going up to rich Beverly Hills, and it's kind of like one of those good old fashioned stories about the gritty kid coming in and showing all the established rich folks that he's a better detective than everybody gives him credit for, obviously bring Rosewood along, the other young kid. There's just a lot of relating to everyday people's jobs and life in general, and like just friendships you've got. And it's just a great movie. And there's a part in there where they're doing some research, and they end up taking their bosses, his boss, into a striptease establishment. I mean, there's just a lot there.
It's funny the way you said that, because that's how a cop would say it. Like, I think anybody would say strip club. But so many times in this movie they say, a striptease establishment, like it's like it's going into a report.
Said it's when the chief's sitting there talking to Eddie Axel Foley. He's over there. He's saying talking about all the stuff he's done. He's busted Victor Maitland's window, ruined the buffet at the Herald Club. He
compromised an unmarked police car.
Said, and then took two of them to a striptease establishment. I mean, it's just hilarious. So yeah,
phrasing is so important to comedy, though. I mean, if you say the same sentence in 4 different ways, and then, like you said, if you stick in an unusual word, all of a sudden it'll resonate in such a different way. It's interesting, Dustin, as a first-time viewer, what do you think made it so explosive at the time? Is it just personality of Eddie Murphy?
Actually, you just answered the question. It's Eddie Murphy. This is the begin of the meteoric rise you mentioned before. It's time for him to earn all of this fame as he did for years. And I think he's young. He is real. The things that make him different from the Beverly Hills Cop are relatable and fun. There are some things that are maybe a little too smooth or too fast talking, but that's okay. We're still rooting for him. And I think you find yourself in his corner no matter what, even when he's very clearly breaking protocol or sneaking into some place. If I could compare him to someone that I don't think has that same likability across the board, I would say Martin Lawrence will annoy you sometimes in like Blue Streak or something. Sometimes, this guy is getting on my nerves. But that never happens with Axel Foley, played by Eddie Murphy. He's calm. He does rush headfirst into things, but the way that he kind of goes through a conversation there is a calculated nature to it. I just think him as a case study for the lead. I know that this movie wasn't written for him. He was like the 6th or 7th choice, and it really, really worked. And makes you think, how was it not written for him?
Gosh, I can't even picture this.
Oh yeah. He can explain his way out of everything. Like he can talk his way out of anything into anything. And what I love about it is my brother. I used to he reminded me so much of Axel Foley. My brother would go into like hotels and get all kinds of free stuff, or get like the best room there is for a discounted price, like he did. And when he goes into the Beverly Palm Hotel.
Don't you think I understand what's going on here?
Yeah. If I was that was a great.
If I were a small time reporter, it's like if I were one of these local reporters, you'd be rolling it out. But I'm just a small time reporter from Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah. I was gonna call it a sitting on top of the world, but now I can't. I guess I'll consider calling it sitting on top of the world everywhere except for the Beverly Palm Hotel. Apparently, that wit is fast, and occasionally in some movies the fast talker can be like slightly on the unlikable side. And I don't think we ever get that from.
No, he's
Eddie.
very likable, just so charismatic. Even though he starts that whole conversation, he just walks up to the counter. He hears somebody else get rejected, like, you should try having a reservation at least a week in advance. And he goes, the nerve of some people.
The nerve.
That gets me every time.
And then he's like, can you check for a reservation? Like, the setup is so
good. The nerve
good.
of some people. The nerve of some people.
And Eddie's little effortless lines are very, very impressive. Like, again, if you just read that off by somebody else, we do not have electricity, but somehow Eddie's delivery is amazing. And then you just mentioned another guy, Dustin, earlier with Jim Carrey as a stand-up, but like, as an actor, if you plug anybody else into a lot of Jim Carrey's vehicles, you fail. And I actually think this movie, it's funny that it gets nominated for Best Screenplay, because I'm not sure that it is that great of a screenplay. I think Eddie masks everything and makes everything look brilliant because it's an actor performing so well.
Yeah. Well, he deserves credit for the whole thing. I mean, that's why there won't be Beverly Hills Cop without it. It's like there's not, that movie's nothing without Axel Foley.
He's also he's fit, and you feel like he is like an active detective. You feel like it makes sense. He's agile enough, and maybe this is the editing or the way they have him in the house or going through to switch between being a man who can be a detective believably, and then also you switch to how quickly he can put like an effeminate voice on and come up, oh, here's the ruse to get past the maitre d'. I'm going to pretend like I have herpes simplex 10, and that's how I'm going to get to Maitland. It's pretty sharp jumps between quick calculated wit and also just things that are generally, and I'm not going to say silly, but more like whimsical. And you don't feel jerked around. You feel like, wow, this guy can really do it all, and that's why you root for him.
It is interesting that Eddie's building up this amazing run here, because this is his first movie where he is the guy. 48 Hours, he's sharing the spotlight with Nick Nolte. Trading Places, he's sharing it with Dan Aykroyd. There's another movie that comes out in '84 called Best Defense. That's a Dudley Moore's first build here. He turns down and leaves Ghostbusters. He's gets Ernie Hudson's role in Ghostbusters, which seems painful to turn down under all other circumstances. It's one of the greatest funny movies of all time, and he would have rocked that. And it hurts me a little bit to know he didn't get that part. No disrespect to Ernie Hudson, but he leaves it in order to do Beverly Hills Cop. And obviously this is a money machine. This is the number one movie that year, and he gets a whole 3 run of them, and he is the guy. And you never win when you turn Ghostbusters down unless you're Eddie Murphy, and this is what you choose to do. And after a run, and I didn't even mention, he was in a time when Saturday Night Live was hurting after they depleted out the regular cast members of Bill Murray, Gilda Radner, Dan Aykroyd, and all the greats from the first run. Eddie put that show in life support, and people had come to expect a lot from that show. And not to diminish other people who were there in the 80s, I do think there was some underrated talent there at the time, but unequivocally, it does not make it. The show doesn't even exist without Eddie Murphy. So in the early 80s, Eddie has become this person people have taken a lot of interest in, and you're right, this is where he gets the show, the spotlight is put on him, and people clearly turn up to the box office to see Eddie.
I would go so far. You mentioned that you didn't know for sure if the screenplay was as strong as earning a nomination. I agree. I think there's a lot about this movie that is, it's almost as if for an hour 45, and I always praise a movie for coming in clean under 2 hours, but a lot of it is they spoon feed you a lot of stuff in this movie.
Yeah, they tell you who the villain is like early, and like,
yeah. And then there's also a lot of other things where it's very plainly like it's not a clever line, it's an exposition line, and that's okay because of Eddie Murphy's performance. So even though we were talking about plot very briefly or what makes this work, I think we can boil it down to, hey, it's Eddie.
you're right.
Yeah, and you can't forget Detective T though. I mean, come on. His role from the very beginning to the very end is just unforgettable and as classic as it comes, because all throughout the movie he's got to like dodge Detective T in order to have time to go over to Beverly Hills to do this. You know, he's like even from the very beginning where he's like, well, how do you know it's a professional hit? Like, well, they weren't worried about your narrow ass. And it's just like the most classic line, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. And they probably knew he was a cop, so then they're probably not allowed to kill cops. And that's what sparks Eddie to go back in the Beverly Hills to figure everything out.
There's a fun thing in this character, though, to your point, Tommy. It's the disregard of authority that is just so likable. And to your point, Dustin, he stays so likable, I think, through actually all the, he genuinely is happy to see his friend Mikey when he gets out of prison. He is showing enough versatility as an actor that
yes,
you believe him as being tough when the action moments hit. You believe him as caring. You believe him as being a good friend when Ginny Summers and he reconnect. This seems like a nice guy that you want to be around. You get why Billy gets roped into doing absolutely career-killing stuff and following along. Eddie Murphy was so charismatic, and he's playing this character that is so charismatic that everybody just goes along with him. Even like if he walks into a warehouse and says, "Show me all your papers," it's like everyone just wants to. It's like he's so charismatic and confident that it's really fun to watch. And it's funny that it's not a goofball kind of thing where it's really slapsticky. It's not like sometimes people from Saturday Night Live get criticized for just going really big. Will Ferrell makes it work for him, but other people get criticized for doing such a strong caricature. But Eddie Murphy is actually showing a pretty decent amount of range for what a character has to do. And that's one of the reasons you connect to him and you like him so much, so that all these other things can work. It's actually kind of seemingly effortless. He's not trying as hard to make you laugh with punch, 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 punch jokes. This movie is not necessarily straight up ha 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 ha. It's fun first, and then it's balanced, and the comedy is within the situations, and they're not trying so hard all the time. And that's actually, it goes down really well because of that.
I think it's more balanced than it is very funny.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. It's an action comedy. Like, it's
so
not
much
just a comedy
so.
comedy.
Right, so much so that when it landed on its like top 63 of best comedies or funniest movies, whichever list that was, I thought to myself, I don't think that's right. I think it's good, and I think it's balanced, and not everything does balance it out well. But as far as what you just said, ha ha ha, like laugh out loud funny. I mean, there were 3 or 4 times. I think it's when you see that little Damon Wayans cameo as the Banana Man.
Just
where I rewound it a couple times, like, this is great. And there are other times that you're just grinning ear to ear. I think when we get, speaking of the comedy, when we get Judge Reinhold as Rosewood, when he makes the turn into being the
goose to his maverick.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, when he does turn into the more fun Beverly Hills Cop of the Beverly Hills detective duo, that's when you're like, okay, now things are livening up. Things are getting a little more fun. That took a little too long. But he's funny, but it's not laugh out loud funny. It's these short little quotes are good. The thing about like eating too much red meat, that little like during the stakeout. Yeah. Those little jokes are good, and they're not meant to have you bust a gut. They're there to just, this is witty writing.
It is. Absolutely.
The one character I was talking about earlier was Jeffrey from Detroit.
Paul Reiser.
Oh yeah. Okay,
yeah. He played an important role in regards to you liking Eddie Murphy. You know how he shows up at the very beginning where he's like, "Oh, Detective Todd, he's coming after you." You know, he's looking for you about the cigarette truck, which was an epic disaster. The cigarette truck opening scene where they went through and destroyed half the city.
An awesome chase scene, by the way.
Yeah.
Set my expectations really high when you start off with that. That's a really good car chase scene.
Exactly. This is a good action movie, too. That's the thing. Like, we were just talking about how balanced this is. A lot of comedy action movies are just goofy.
I can't wait until you go to see the second one and you see how that cigarette deal relates to the second one.
Tommy's about to hijack this, Dustin. Clear your schedule. He wants to come back next week to finish this trilogy.
That's good. Let's book a bus trip, brother.
We're all going to meet in Knoxville because that's the appropriate amount of time to watch all these movies.
No, you got to fly to Louisiana because I'm in Texas. He's in Mississippi. So fly to Louisiana. We'll meet you in Baton Rouge. We'll go on a bus trip, and we'll watch Beverly Hills Cop 2 and 3.
That's right.
Now, Tommy, how did you feel? We talked about how good this movie is with Eddie Murphy and how it would suck with anybody else. How would you particularly feel if this movie starred Sylvester Stallone?
I wouldn't have ever watched.
Yeah,
it would have been life altering for me, because half of my, like I talked about this on the other podcast, like a lot of my joking and humor of my personality comes from Axel Foley, like the sarcasm and the, just the way he jokes about everything and he's not like serious about stuff. I think that like it would be life altering.
Instead, you'd be going around to everybody going, Adrian!
Yeah. Which then no one
I don't know why I feel like he would say that in this movie, but that's the best, I can do.
I mean, I couldn't imagine that. Like what it wouldn't have been a comedy at that point, He
didn't want it to be. He wanted him to be darker. He wanted him to be serious. There's later a movie called Cobra that comes out. It's got some similarities in the plot structure to this. And that is what you get with the Stallone movie. And if you haven't heard of Cobra today, there's a reason for that. It's not as good as Beverly Hills Cop. It's interesting that this seems like it was tailor-made for Eddie Murphy. That's how brilliant he is. He walked into somebody else's probably shaky movie, and it doesn't feel shaky at all. The director, Martin Brest, asks Eddie multiple times, I don't really know what to do here. What do you got, Eddie? And every time he bailed him out. It's just amazing. There's such thing as being comedic genius.
Sort of all of a sudden a dramatic savant. Hey, I'm kind of new to the action movie business here, but tell you what, if I were in the seats, here's what I would want to happen. Like that's great instinct.
It is, and he became an enormous crutch. So,
are we doing anything to take away from Martin Brest for giving us Geely? Like, is it so much to say that like the toddler couldn't figure out calculus? Like,
yep. You set the bar high, like you said, Dustin, early. And, yep. But Mickey Rourke was also considered to do
That's
this.
right.
Jeff Bridges, James Caan, Billy Crystal. I feel like Billy Crystal might actually be enjoyable, but it's going to be as good. De Niro, can't picture it. Harrison Ford. I mean, I just don't feel like they even knew what they wanted to do.
Weird.
I know. Richard Gere, can't picture that. Michael Keaton.
Oh.
Michael Keaton would be fun, but it's not going to be this good. Pacino even got considered. Richard Pryor, that might be good. But even Richard Pryor can't do all those like soft moments.
I could kind of see Pacino, just because but it would be so much more serious, you know. The movie would have just been, you know, it definitely wouldn't have been a hit like this. I mean, I think people went and saw that movie and were just like, you have to go see this movie. It is hilarious and it is just awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what it was like in 1984 because I was just being born, but you know, I'm assuming everybody was talking about it.
6-month-old Tommy Allen heard it in his ears and it got into his subconscious and it was there.
Probably. You know? Yeah. You never know.
Yeah, other names included Kurt Russell, Arnold Schwarzenegger, John Travolta. That would be not a good fit. And Robin Williams. I mean, Robin can do just about anything, but I just don't. This is how good Eddie is. These other names, which are some impressive names on here, you sit there and go, wow, in a movie where you just didn't know what you wanted, you got exactly what you needed.
Yeah.
Well, if I can take out our linchpin here, which is Eddie, I like writing the plot summary when I host with you, Russell. I like writing it out. And it makes me think, let's remove the charisma of Eddie Murphy here. We have a friend out of prison comes and visits a Detroit cop. The Detroit cop gets knocked out after the end of just merely hours together. Knocked out, his friend is assassinated. Professional hit job. And what's tying it together? A conversation about a security job gig in Beverly Hills for an art dealer, something that is truly brand new information. And that is what and the smuggling object at that point, we didn't even sniff out drugs yet. We're just dealing with these bearer bonds, these Deutschmarks. Then it gets us to Beverly Hills. Now I'm going to say that like that's shaky at best. I don't know if it's compelling by itself. I'm willing to follow Eddie Murphy to go see him do cool stuff in Beverly Hills. But the idea of just, so I got a job as a security guy, and that's the lead to my death. Then we get there, and...
That's pretty fast, though. I wrote it down. 19 minutes is where he gets into Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
Man, it seems like so much longer.
And Maitland doesn't do anything to appear innocent.
He doesn't.
Flaunting his guilt in front of this guy who he doesn't know is a cop.
There are Bond villains with more depth than this.
And so that's why
he thought he was untouchable. I mean, this guy was been on to untouchable. Even when Eddie goes,
that's a good point,
reports to the police, they're like, "Do you know who this guy is? Tell him to stop bothering him. Get him out of here." They try to ship him out a couple times.
You know what? If you do that,
if
you do that, you need to get it to the point sooner. You need to know who it was sooner, so it's like Ocean's 11, where it's just like, I'm telling you, this is the guy, and it's not about who done it. It's about this is impossible, and you're going to accomplish the impossible by taking down this untouchable guy. To Dustin's point, they take a while to tell you that point too, so they kind of didn't do that angle either. So like you can do the like, I'm a great detective, I'm going to figure this out. And you're going to have to figure, you know, like it's going to take time to come to figure out who it was, which they don't do that clearly. But also they don't introduce him quickly enough to be like, oh, I know it was that gangster, and it's going to be impossible to incriminate him. And like he's so clean, like everybody knows he's been doing it, but like we can't take him down. I'm going to take him down.
It seems as if they like we get there, but we had a couple of extended blinks on our way to get there. Like, did it have to make sense when you're watching it for the first time? No, you're engrossed, and that's okay. But if you do like kind of look back on it, like what else could we have picked? I feel like someone reached into a hat. Like you said, we don't know what we're doing with this movie. We don't even know who's going to star in it. Art dealer smuggling. Did anyone have art dealer smuggler? Okay, we're gonna put this is the bad guy. Like it could have been anything. We've got drugs and not money laundering, but bearer bonds coming in. Somebody raised their hand in the writing room and goes, I know something about the process of having to store things before it passes customs. And they're like, okay, sure, let's do 5 minutes on that. It almost seemed like we can scrub away some of the sloppiness because, we get to watch Eddie Murphy do it. I'm starting to lean too far into the, like, sounding like I'm hating on this movie, which I'm not. I'm just pointing out that I think there's some stuff here that was, as far as like what you said originally, like screenplay, like, I don't know if it all made a ton of sense or if it was as compelling without now I'm going to put the linchpin back in, without Eddie.
No, I think you're right. And I mean, the supporting cast is good, but how good are they if that's not your leading man to just, everybody's pretty straight around them. I mean, Judge Reinhold's a very likable guy. I do think, John Ashton's a good grump, playing Taggart.
He's a great grump.
Yeah, he's a good grumpy guy. But again, these guys are there to, play tennis with Eddie, to hit the ball back to him.
He's classic too. He's like, well, there goes my pension.
There are some good one-liners, and they ad-lib a lot together. And like Eddie brings that out in them and makes them add that stuff into here. Because quite frankly, they're writing the script on the fly. They have tons of rewrites. They have a lot of a hard time making this movie. Again, they don't know what they want to do even as they're making it. It's weird. And Eddie's that guiding light, and his chemistry was good on the set. As good as he was in the movie and the product, he was making people laugh. Sometimes they had to reshoot a lot because he was doing that. But that joy that joy that he brought into other people is infectious, and I think that's part of the energy of what makes this fun. Because you can kind of see they're having fun, like in the Super Cop scene, like when he's like talking about like making this tall tale light up, like literally John Ashton is like laughing on the final cut.
Right.
He's like laughing and looking down, like this looks like a Saturday Night Live, like Eddie's making him break, and he did that a lot.
That's pretty good, and that scene in particular, where he ends up, he was like, where he rats him out, and they're like, "Is this what really happened?"
No.
He said, "No, no." And then Eddie at the end of that, he's like, "Just for the record, the Super Cop story was working."
Yeah, y'all had to go and ruin a great lie. Yep, yep. And little things like that are great to like reference. But in the moment, it's like being so blunt about how you guys, you Beverly Hills squares, are really not picking up what I'm laying down. Not every movie can so, like, obviously have a character point out to another character. Like, you just don't get it. And every time Eddie Murphy does it, every time Axel Foley does it, it's great.
Well, it's great when Lieutenant Bogomil at the end ends up doing a very elaborate cover-up that exceeds the Super Cops like thing.
It brings it all. Brings it all together.
And even though he's not very funny doing it, like Eddie has taught the whole department his horrible policing ways that are dangerous and will probably get the guy exonerated later. But I mean, it sure is fun to watch, and he's taught them all how to bend the rules to the maximum. So
right, and that's what it's all about. Is that I tell you, bend the rules, just don't break them. I mean, of course, he breaks.
I think he breaks them.
Well, what's funny? He bends the rules in like a non-Serpico way. Like he bends the rules in and he's not doing something that you might consider dastardly or like too violent or like the way he's just being slick about it. Like we as an audience, we appreciate someone that's slick. We don't appreciate someone that's ultra violent or careless or problematic towards women
and unbelievable. Like that's the thing, is like what he's doing, the way he handles himself is just so believable, that somebody would believe his story and immediately give him attention and everything. I just can't wait for you to watch the second one so you can get more of that, because they have to spend some time introducing who he is and who all these other people are. And then that's why the second one gets into, really Axel Foley. He does so many things in the second one that are just awesome.
But it's interesting, the Rosewood and Taggart combination. They paired up various finalists and asked them to do improvisation in selecting them. And they gave them the following instructions of you're a middle-aged couple married for years and you're bickering with each other on an average evening. And Reinhold immediately picked up on a magazine and the two just started improvising the 5 pounds of red meat thing. And that they ended up putting that into the movie. I got to hand them some credit. They are very fun to watch. I got more like, like teenage son and, grumpy dad off of them because, there's an age difference between them. But if they're going for grumpy married couple, it works for me.
Well, and we have another instance of that where, in order for the joke to land, you have Taggart say, like, why are you telling me this? What makes you think I have any interest in this at all? Like, it's
golden response, though. Well, I see you eating a lot of red meat.
Right. Not many movies can do this, and I think in some instances I would maybe give a movie a demerit for trying hard to have a joke land, but these all land effortlessly.
Absolutely. I gotta say, it's interesting. Some people have speculated. This is a whole internet thing. Is Axel Foley gay? And I think this is the result of Jenny Summers is just his platonic friend, and they don't end up hooking up, even though there kind of seems like some moments where she might have some attraction to him. And I want to say it's probably, I don't know, 1984. It's a big budget. Well, it's not a huge budget, but it clearly was a big thing. Was the world just not ready yet to see a black lead actor be with a blonde, blue-eyed woman on screen?
Oh, that's interesting.
So much so that people are now sitting there going, like, is this guy gay? Because, like, they're not together. So it's bad in two ways. One, it's like, oh, if you're not with this woman, like, if you're not this babe magnet, you must be gay. So, like, that creates a bad narrative for the people who are writing that, like, for just assuming that automatically. But then also, it might be also condemning of maybe they were just playing it safe. Because when this was a Stallone script, they were a romantic couple. That much has been out there. So they might have walked it back saying, like, we can watch a movie with the lead black actor, but he can't be with a white woman. That's upsetting to people. So
interesting.
I have to wonder if that's part of what's happening here.
I wanted to take a moment to say that I was going to offer kudos for leaving romantic love out of this movie because we didn't need it.
Yeah,
like
the friendship was good, I think.
The friendship was very good
because they could joke around with each other a lot more, And she's always like at the end, she's like, let me get my stuff and we can argue about it on the way.
Another thing, while we're on these uncomfortable, controversial speculation topics, I want to ask a question. So there are gay people in this movie. It's 1984. Serge is there, the banana man at there. Again, Eddie plays and portrays a gay man in order to gain access to the villain at one point. Is this done in a bad way where you're watching this today and it's really cringy, where it's just like, haha, they're gay, I'm laughing at them because they're gay? Or is it like, we're acknowledging them that gay people are part of the community, they're in Beverly Hills, and these characters are not done in spite, they're just kind of lovable. Like, I frankly like Serge. I don't think he's funny because he's gay, I just think his reactions to Eddie are very like, how much do you sell this for? Get the F out of here. No, I cannot get out of here. It's like, I'm serious.
Well, actually, you have stumbled upon what I teased earlier, which is that I think this is something that doesn't hold up. And it's not the content, because I think Serge is very funny. And I think the little ruse where he pretends to have a type of herpes strain to get into the club, like, I think that's witty and smart. There's one other instance where we have the reference to homosexuality, which is when Axel is witnessing the crate going into the warehouse. One of the guys is describing a story about a bar he was just in, and he said that there was somebody near him that had like a crazy eye, and the joke was he thought the crazy eye, like, oh, what, are you coming on to me? That's why I wished you were here, or that's why I wished you were at the bar with me, because if you were at the bar with me, I could just send you over to him and you can have your way with you. As if, like, it's another time they go to the effeminate men or homosexual men as the punchline of a joke. Now, I think this is a sign of the times. The movie is nearly 40 years old. But also, the people behind the movie and Eddie by himself, like, they're better than having to return to that well multiple times. I counted 5 times across different bits. So it seems like this was almost too easy. They are better than that not for stooping to the level in the first place, just for having to go back to it. They could have come up with several other funny things, and instead they went back to it a bunch. So that's the one thing that from earlier I said, that doesn't really hold up well anymore. And if you're watching it nearly 40 years later, are you saying, is it fun? It's still fair to laugh at it because it was good. It worked in the movie, but you kind of wish they would have used more of the talent they had to have to make an otherwise great movie. I'll get off my soapbox.
Okay, so this is exactly what I was wondering. So you feel like it does have a little bit of currency. I find myself sometimes being really forgiving with comedy and just saying they made the characters, particularly Banana Man and Surge, likable. You're not doing it to condemn them. The hero likes them. They help the hero out.
Right.
That all seemingly works. So I do think there's a moment like where Eddie walks down the street and there's two guys wearing like leather suits, which is ironically not all that different from what he's wearing in like his stand-up specials later.
Right.
And he ends
Exactly,
up he
yes.
ends up laughing at them as if like they're a couple and like just like, I can't believe what I just saw. That felt like a punchline. However, Surge does not feel like a punchline. Surge is very funny. I want to see Surge take the next customer because I just think Surge is a funny person.
Yeah, I think it's important to say, like, Serge isn't funny because he's possibly gay. He's funny because he's funny.
He's very excited about the drink he can make you. That's funny.
Correct.
Oh yeah, and he's got a great personality. And I mean, like to echo what Russell was saying, that was more of a support. And Eddie gets along with him real well, and it was in a positive light. But they did it for a positive outlook on things, and to start introducing the world to people like that are part of society.
I think it's a major movie that a lot of people, number one movie on the box office here, a lot of people saw it, and it said gay people exist, and you can interact with them, and like them and be friends with them, and it's okay. It won't hurt you. So to your point, Dustin, I guess there's some bad spots, and I guess there's some good stuff.
I think Eddie and Arsenio caught a lot of beef in Coming to America,
Which we covered, by the way.
when they did hire on a bunch of other actors for that movie. Now, looking back in the history of all that.
Gilbert R. Hill is the real-life police department homicide detective. He was the president of Detroit City Council at one point. Martin Brest met him visiting Detroit to do some research for the locations, and he seemed to say that, he had this quality that somehow seemed like he could be Eddie's father. And that's how he landed this role. He doesn't have a lot of acting credits.
He's real.
I wish he was in this movie more because
Oh yeah.
he does seem like an actor to me, and he's really good in this role. What do you like about their dynamic together?
He's just so good, like he's talking about the chief chewing his ass out or whatever, and then he's like, "Oh, don't worry, he didn't chew all of it out." And just the one-liners here and there between those two characters, and then now that you're done being a California hero, you need to get back here to your real job, and just the whole dynamic there is great. I personally love it in a way that is father-son type.
It is. There's a sternness that's like really riding him hard. Doesn't take a lot of like he expects a lot of him. He wants a lot from him, and it comes across. And he's tough on him in a fatherly sort of way. But on the other hand, as soon as he goes out to Beverly Hills and he kind of gets in trouble out there, he says he's a really fine detective. And he's like, the other guy's like, I find that hard to believe.
Yeah.
He's not even on screen at that point, but that line goes a long way to show the fondness and the warmth that he has for the character.
Well, and it builds to the second one as well. You'll get more of that in the second one. It's just so awesome to think that he wasn't even a real actor. It's crazy.
I think our villain, Stephen Berkoff, is, again, I mentioned that it's funny I made the conclusion that he's a Bond villain. He is one of the main Bond villains in Octopussy, and somehow that feels more fitting there. If there might be something that's a little bit lacking, I might think that Stephen Berkoff is here. He's very one-dimensional. And maybe that's okay for what this is, but if there was any place for this to go better in terms of writing, I think it's around the villain and his criminal operations. I think we're too still in the gangster cocaine run. Like, to your point, Dustin, I think the writing gets a little bit away from itself while they're trying to uncover the drug ring aspect of this. He's a criminal lord. They go way too into that while they're trying to nail him for something.
Yeah.
It was a tangent that started to feel like another movie at that point. And it's 145, but it could be 90 minutes. And I was sitting there thinking, if there was a place to pull from, it's this pursuit here. It's a good action movie. It's on when they bust the guns out at the end, it's fun. But the sleuthing stuff about trying to get through the coffee grounds and stuff like that, if there was anything that was slowing down a little bit for me, it was that.
Well, that's them holding your hand. That's them saying. I think today. I think if we were to look back to a couple months ago when we did like The Departed, there are things that the director and the writers in that movie don't spoon feed the audience because by now our audiences know some of the things about if you were to press this witness now, it's going to get tossed out. Or like people have watched Law and Order SVU for long enough to know a lot of the rules about police procedure more so than they did in '84. That being said, this movie does tell you every time exactly what's going on. Oh, don't you know? And then it's almost like turn to audience. Coffee grounds can be used to hide drugs from drug dogs. And oh, thank you, movie for telling me that. But like it's almost like lowest common denominator for to make sure everyone can understand why Axel's going in, but Judge Reinhold is staying in the car, and why he's stuck waiting because he's not allowed to go in, and Foley is off duty and not under, not all of that stuff. I think does slow the movie down or weigh the movie down a little bit. Or I mean, if we shortened it to 90, that's good. If we kept it at 145 and filled it with more of the relationship building with Rosewood and Taggart, I think that would be 10 more minutes, 12 more minutes there that we eat up, that we'd love.
I see how you get a second movie because the scenes with them coming together is a lot of fun.
That's a great trio.
I love the scene where like Taggart is being roped into it. Tommy, we've started to nitpick a little bit. Is this just inconsequential given the type of movie it is?
Oh, for sure. I could care less about all the errors or mistakes. I think every error and mistake I like. Talking about the villain, there's a really good scene in there where it's at the very end. Eddie goes in to find the drugs, and he's like, okay, go get Billy. And then that's when they put the gun to his head. And they're standing there when Victor Maitland comes in, and or they're like, take her away. And she's like, well, what are you going to do with him? And he's like, well, I think you should be more concerned about what we're going to do with you. Then they proceed to, hit Eddie in the stomach and all that and the other.
He takes a beating, but he goes running off in good shape.
Oh, yeah,
later.
yeah. Well, I mean, and then, that's where he's like, if anything happens to her, oh, I'm all ears, is what Victor says. And he says, I'll kill you. And then Victor says, oh, that would be a funny trick.
And when he does get killed, it is a lot of bullets, and it's surprisingly violent given the light tone of the movie. I remember seeing that much blood. I was sitting there going like, whoa, Tarantino, that's a lot for this. I didn't need, that came out of left field. I was like, that was a leftover from the Stallone script.
I also kind of felt like it was odd because there's absolutely zero blood when Mikey is executed.
Yeah, exactly. They have not set the bar for that. When the henchmen and stuff are getting picked off and like no blood, and then all of a sudden it's like unloading like semi-automatic pistols and they're like I guess it's a climax, but on the other hand, it was like Hot Fuzz, for instance, established that this is going to be an absurd amount of blood, and that's part of the humor that this world that we've that we've entered into. Beverly Hills Cop had not done that for me, so it was jarring.
You got this like machine gun shootout, a handheld like submachine guns being held by the henchmen, the cronies at Maitland's place. You've got Taggart who runs in with the shotgun, which I love, hero movement. I stood up and cheered when Taggart gets the shotgun out the trunk and comes up behind. I mean, it was like, all right, the gang's all here. But then we have some other strange things happening. Like, okay, now our soundtrack is cut off.
I don't know, but he can't get over the wall a second later, and that steals the show for me. Because I love it when they can't get over the wall. Like that is so.
And Axel starts laughing at him when they finally do, and then the machine guns go off. It's just fantastic.
They do the good guys have to be fired at first, otherwise they're wrong for killing people. There's a lot of like bullet strings in front of their feet. Okay, now I have to shoot this guy because he's shooting at me.
Is this the one where Billy stands up and he's like, Beverly Hills Police, you're all under arrest?
It is.
Yes.
And then good. Taggart's like, if you do that again, I'll shoot you myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and then you get this kind of little crazed moment with Billy where he's like, remember the scene at the end of when they're almost out of ammo and the whole Bolivian army's there? And he's got that kind of crazed look in his eye. I'm just like, all right, now I can see how this movie, especially since you're bringing these three back, I can see how this becomes a really fun trilogy.
That scene actually play. There's some play off of that in the second one, where Billy ends up with just an arsenal. So you'll get there. You'll get there eventually. But to go back to that ending scene, one of the things that can't be forgotten is when all the police finally show up after they've already done their thing, and all the cops rear end each other. I mean, it's just hilarious. They're slamming on their brakes, and they're all hitting each other. It's pretty funny.
Martin Brest is fired, the director here, from War Games, which is a movie we've covered. You can go download that if you want. This is his second directing job. The industry thought he was damaged goods. This movie has kind of been cobbled together. It is an unlikely success, so even down to the director. Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, the guys who produced this movie, disagreed. Two Paramount executives continually called Brest and wanted him to direct this film, and they couldn't get him. But Bruckheimer just kept calling and trying, and he decided, Brest did, fine, I'm going to flip a coin. If I get it, I'll do it, and if not, then I won't. And he did it. So this movie turned out really well, so I'm glad. But I am wondering, it's funny, Martin Brest is kind of being portrayed in these comments as necessarily not being a huge win. However, he does Scent of a Woman later, which is a good movie. I like that movie. And Midnight Run in 1988 is another one of those. So it's funny. He's all over the place because Meet Joe Black and Geely are not so good later. Martin Brest, confusing filmography. And at least in this movie, I think Eddie Murphy got him through a lot of it. It was a tight schedule. They kept rewriting stuff. They kept not being able to execute the stuff that they wanted to. They had stuff in it that didn't make sense. At one point, like he was an East LA cop being transferred to Beverly Hills. No one realized that East LA is an area of Los Angeles and that he wouldn't be being transferred. So they had to go back and fix that.
Yeah, having it be a cop be on vacation is odd. In reality, this is a vengeance movie, not a justice movie.
Yeah.
And you think when you save the day, yeah, you saved Jenny, who you got in trouble in the first place. You bust a drug and smuggling ring. It's not like, somebody had it's not like The Rock, where we have missiles aimed at the coast. One of the things I was surprised not to get, and it was a positive thing, I really thought we were going to have one of those police brass individuals in the pocket of Maitland. See, and this is coming from a guy who's just saw it for the first time. Wouldn't you have expected that, like, oh, they're leaving him alone because there's a lot of money in this part of the city.
Yeah.
And so one of them, is in the pocket or somewhere with a double cross. Never happened.
You're studying this movie, though, closer. I mean, again, Eddie Murphy waves his hands around, and these things do kind of disappear. And there's the rewatch value that you may not be getting by returning to it of just, there's a big smile on your face by watching Eddie Murphy do all the things that he does. I'm kind of criticizing Martin Brest and the writers a little bit, but at the end of the day, it works. It's a formula that still works.
300 million.
Yep. It took him 11 weeks and 80 days of filming to do it, which is a little bit on the long side. And I was going to say, it's the number one movie in the year, and it was the highest grossing R-rated movie for 19 years to come. That's amazing.
I think The Exorcist was before it. The Exorcist was R-rated, number one.
Fun thing, though, talking about Martin Brest, he's the clerk who checks Axel Foley out of the hotel at the end of the movie. So I always love it when a director sticks themselves in the movie. And you pointed out, Dustin, there's some directing moments of this that are good in terms of the action. The chase scene is good. The shootout scenes are good. When they have conversations with each other, which are those heartfelt moments, I actually like the camera work where they put the camera behind the shoulders. And they're kind of quick cuts back and forth, but what that does is it puts you in the seat of the person who he's talking to, and that's a nice move. I mean, it's not a new move. It's out of the playbook, but it's used appropriately. And I gotta say, the tender moments work. And they don't dwell in it, they don't stay in it, but that's part of what fills this movie out, and it has heart. A good comedy will deliver some heart there. You're pretty sad that Mikey's dead. On a lot of movies like that, you'd just be like, it could turn into a Jason Statham movie. It's like, you killed that thing that I'm, and it's just like, now I'm mad. Like, it means something because of how they portrayed it. So I will give them some dues. Fish Out of Water, Detroit, Beverly Hills. Isn't this a fun juxtaposition they show? Don't they really, like, right from the kickoff of the movie? I'm not sure Heat Is On is the best introduction to
you got
Detroit.
Part of that introduction involves the credits at the beginning and all those authentic scenes that they were filming.
I loved it.
If you think it's the director's cut or one of those extra DVDs you get when you buy the trilogy.
Mhm.
You have them talk about all the scenes, and then that one scene where that kid's spraying the milk out of his mouth. They were like, I mean, do we have to go up and ask his parents permission to use him in this film?
Yeah.
How are we going to do that? And they're in the middle of Detroit, and it's 1984. I think that's all part of that opening scene that kind of gets forgotten a little bit. In general, the cigarette truck, that part where it just kicks everything off is just really funny.
They do a good job of showing you the world that he's from. Again, we said there was 19 minutes of Detroit time. You get the grit that he comes from in that, and then he goes out to like Beverly Hills in the world of art dealerships and stuff like that.
And how nice the police office is, like the how much better their police office is than the one in Detroit.
Mhm.
It's like they got
Yes.
all these fancy computers, and he's like,
man, your squad car is nicer than my apartment.
yeah.
Yeah. I think this is the cleanest squad car I've ever been in. That's delivered well, yeah.
It's got those two just,
They look like models.
stern officers that are just like, come on, buddy.
Yeah, definitely worlds colliding.
Yes. This movie soundtrack was also fire. Again, whenever a hit movie at this time period, its soundtrack helps carry it as well. I gave a little bit of a hard time for The Heat Is On, but I mean, the big theme here by Harold Faltermeyer, Axel F is the name of the song. This is just, I'm not a big synth guy, but this just is great. This adds to the fun. I was a little hard on The Heat Is On being played when we see these gritty Detroit scenes, but on the other hand, later in the movie, they are playing the Pointer Sisters or like Patti LaBelle and stuff like that while gunshots are going off, and that's part of what makes this fun. So by having this lighthearted music, which I'm not an 80s music guy, but it's just contributing to keeping this light, and that's was so the right call. Otherwise, you get Cobra with Stallone, and the music is a part of that. So this is out of character for me, but I'm gonna say that that's part of what makes this movie is the soundtrack.
Yeah, the Pointer Sisters neutron dance is during the chase scene as well. So we get put into this 80s music synth zone. We get put into the zone early and we never leave it. And upon my second watch this morning, I thought to myself, we use Axel F so much, and we use different, like, not versions of it, but like we tone it up or tone it down depending on exactly what's going on in the scene.
Right. If they're doing detective work, or
Yes.
if they're, like how,
Yeah.
or if it's an action scene, and then like if they use it to build up scene. Like when they're going into Victor Maitland's, I'm pretty sure, that's when they like really drop it, and they're like, okay, something good's gonna happen. So they use the theme to build up and push down. It's really great.
And it works. And for a while there, I was thinking to myself, does this need to be darker? Do we need to trade out these little upbeat percussion, like high tinny sounds and synth? Do we need to trade that out for something that's darker, scarier? And then the answer to myself, and you just repeated it, Russell, was no. This is how this movie has to be, and it works.
Yep, absolutely. And it's time to hand out some awards. Tom, you ready to give out some awards here?
Well, sure, but first I just must say I'm looking out the window here at a stray cat taking a dump in my yard. Good. But nobody knows at this point that I'm looking out the car. I guess we did say something about the car, but I mean, it's over here smelling. It took a dump. It's trying to cover it up. Now it was smelling it, and now it's walking towards me, which is really creepy.
Is this a cat you know?
No, it's a stray cat. I almost ran over it the other day, but I didn't realize it's over here in my side yard, and now it's literally right beside me right now in my car, and I'm really freaked out.
This is the most downer answer to you want to hand out some more.
Tommy, don't move. They can't see if you don't move.
That's right. Okay, well, let's hand out the award.
MVP. I think I know where this is going, but Tommy.
Axel Foley.
Mr. Eddie Murphy. Yeah. Dustin, is this a sweep?
You know it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Me too. Yep. I mean, I think we spent 45 minutes, if not more, of this episode talking about how awesome Eddie Murphy is. Best supporting actor. This is tougher.
Oh, this is tough.
Yeah.
I am
Who's your
not
best
going.
supporting actor,
I'm not
Tommy?
going first. I'm not going first.
You're not going first. Okay,
I'll go
Dustin.
first.
Who's your best supporting actor?
For me, it's Judge Reinhold here. This is kind of, we didn't touch on it too much, Tommy, but there's a huge difference in seeing this for the first time ever and growing up with it, especially how critical I was. And I felt like, how did this guy not get as much work? And I know he did eventually do some other movies, and then he came back for a late career surge. He's older now. I thought to myself, if this guy was born 15 years later, he's taking half of McConaughey's roles. Or if romantic comedies were bigger at that time, or something about him, he seems like somewhere between like a Steve Zahn and a Josh Hartnett. Like he fits a lot of things. Handsome dude. All the things kind of work for him, and it just kind of never turned into a superstar.
I like Judge Reinhold. I don't think he's necessarily the stud like that by any means. I think he's kind of got this like nebbish kind of like I'm rooting for you underdog quality to him.
Yeah, I think he could be, and he actually said this himself. I think he believes that too. But I think if you start the movie, if his character, what it becomes, he's not that at first. At first,
No.
he's a little more straight laced,
Definitely.
and I think you could put him in a Wall Street suit, and he fits into other movies. I think he could have been used more, but he's talked about like, hey, I was rough to work with. I didn't deserve all the accolades. I had some success, but that's all I deserved.
Well, I mean, since you used him, I mean, I'll just go with Detective P. I mean, I know he doesn't get a lot of screen time in this first one, and it's hard to say that it's a real true supporting role. But I mean, for what he's done for as far as like when I rehearse this movie and talk about all the one-liners and everything, a lot of them come from him. So
He's great.
yeah, I mean, that's who I'm gonna.
It's a good pick, and I considered going with him. He's just not quite in enough, but I actually really like Bogomil, the Ronny Cox, and this is a career shift for him.
Yeah, Bogomil was good because at the end he takes the cake.
That's a great scene when Bogomil like makes up that fabricated scenario. What happened? Like, I'm gonna see that in your report. Like, yep. This is a change for him. He was normally a warm, like dad-like character in his portrayals before this movie. After this movie, he goes on to do tougher, hard-nosed, lines. So playing this police chief, being a tough guy, changed his entire career, and we later see where he goes in RoboCop. But I mean, yeah, I really liked Ronny Cox in this one. I really liked how he come out like, well, we do things by the book here, and the transformation that he does as a character. He is also just taken in by Axel Foley's charisma. And
oh yeah, that's what makes him a really good. So that's a really good pick, Ross. That's because of the transformation.
Yes,
and how I mean, that's perfect. Yeah, his whole entire life was changed.
Yes, and I do like your pick though, Gilbert Hill. He's great. Now, Tommy, Hidden Gem.
Well, I mean, nobody really. I think I don't know if people would miss it, but Surge for sure. I mean, come on, you come in there with a lemon twist, and
It's very good.
and then you'll see him later in the trilogy, and he just has these little tiny parts that are hidden gems.
That is great. He made this character of this just it's kind of like Fez from that 70s show. Like, we're not sure where he's from, and
Right, we should at least say it correctly. It's Serge.
Serge.
Yeah, Serge is
Serge.
It's an awesome super caffeinated beverage from the 90s.
Yeah. He gets this character from somebody, an impersonation that he thought was just so funny and hysterical of somebody who was working on his hair and makeup as an actor. She always wore sunglasses and she was doing makeup, and he would ask her like, how do I know what you're doing? You've got like these big giant sunglasses on, and like she was just such a character. She'd be like, don't be stupid, I know what I'm doing. Like this very strong confidence that Serge has. But it was also friendly but warm. And it's funny that this makeup lady that Bronson Pinchot encountered is the basis of this very funny gallery owner. So
Right.
It's a good pick. Dustin, how about you? Hidden Gem.
I'm going Bronson Pinchot as Serge. It's a 2 for 2. We're on the same page. And I the one thing I'll add in is he also plays a dramatic role. in the Pointer Sisters music video for the Neutron Dance.
Very good.
He's awesome.
I'm gonna go with Damon Wayans, the Banana Man. I just like Damon Wayans, and I think he's just so funny. Like he's like normally this is about $27 and for the buffet, but you can have this and this and this, and it's just like I just want some bananas. Just take them. Like the mischievous nature is just like I don't care for all this rich world that I'm like he's like this guy, this working class guy, and like he's he's just working at it, and he's just like, yeah, I don't care.
It's so funny.
It is good.
And which that, I mean, you gotta, obviously that turns into one of the most iconic scenes from the entire decade, I would think.
I asked somebody who's a car guy, what would happen if you jammed bananas into somebody's tailpipe? And I guess it was not going to stall out that fast, but it will stall out is the answer. If it's packed in there tight enough, but it has to be packed in there pretty tight.
Well, he put quite a few in there, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yes. So if you're going to do this to somebody, say your principal or whoever, or your neighbor who you don't like, I mean, you're really going to need to get a lot of bananas, and you're really going to need to push them in there with some kind of device. So that comes from an engineer.
I must say, I made this comment the other day as people were stalling, and it's almost like we're dealing with bananas in the tailpipe. So someone who hasn't seen this movie, you don't want to say that in front of, because they're not going to get that line, and they're going to probably go elsewhere.
We're not going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe again.
Exactly.
That was so Richard Pryor. Like, I love it when Richard Pryor does like white people impressions. Eddie Murphy is definitely influenced by Richard Pryor, so when he does that little moment there, it's just like, that's a little bit of Richard Pryor there. Like,
you've been hanging around this guy too long. I'm not
gonna follow for the banana in the tailpipe. You've been hanging out with this guy for long. That's so funny. It's like here, it looks like you're on a stakeout. Stakeout? No, this is a picnic. This is a picnic area around here.
He's taking them in too in a moment of matter of seconds. I love the charisma. He's as charismatic as Ferris Bueller. Just he can get away with anything.
You got to wonder at the time after the movie came out, how many people tried the whole like letting the light turn red and then flooring it after they saw that scene where he avoids the cops again, or the guys tailing him.
Tommy, if you had to recast somebody and put somebody else in their place, who's it going to be?
Well, I mean, you brought up a lot of good points about the villain, but I don't have a problem with him.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have your back there. What if you put Michael Douglas in his place? They had it to spend. I mean, they made. I didn't actually get how many times over this movie made its budget back, but no, they had it. Like I think actually getting somebody who takes it serious and isn't so one-dimensional actually makes it funnier. Like that this is happening around him. So we've seen this sometimes, like where you just play it straight as a villain, and the mayhem around you actually becomes quite funny.
What if you get Ruger Hauer there? They actually look a lot alike too.
I like that. I might like that more.
More menacing.
Is this your pick, by the way? This is good.
Yeah, that's mine.
Yeah.
We all went after Steven Berkoff.
Yeah, we all went after Steven Berkoff. Yeah.
I didn't go after him.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you went after him hard with an axe.
After you did your whole spiel on why you shouldn't have been the villain and this, that, and the other, it makes a little bit of sense.
Oh, you went after him hard. You were coming through the bathroom door with an axe going, here's Tommy. And poor Steven Berkoff was just shuddering in the floor of the bathroom. No! Best shot, Tommy.
I'll just take it easy on this one and do the chase. And when it comes through one of those roads and just where they've got it in front of it, and the truck is literally hitting each car, I thought that shot was great. And if you watch the direct cut, they actually said in that during that shot, one of the cars comes out in front of the truck, and the driver of the truck had to make this awesome move to make sure that he hit that car out of the way, because the car turned sideways in front of the truck, and they thought that it was going to end the scene. They were going to have to reshoot it, but he was able to just hit that truck out of the way and keep moving. So I'd say that was the best shot.
That's a great answer. Dustin, what's your best shot?
When we make that transition to Beverly Hills, and we get I think it's kind of a classic shot now of kind of looking at the sky, and you only see the tops of the palm trees, and then you pan down to see him driving his blue Nova through.
That blue piece of crap Chevy Nova.
Yeah.
I remember that you used to drive that crappy Blue Nova. What do you drive now? Same crappy Blue Nova.
It reminds me of one of the oldest little like trivia things. It might not even be true, but they said the joke is, they say that the Chevy Nova didn't sell so well in Mexico. Well, why? Nova means no go.
My best shot's gonna be. This is a little on the nose, but it's the kind of movie that this is, and it's just Eddie's infectious energy comes here. They're at the strip club. Taggart takes the arrest on the second gunman. The gunman and Eddie winks at him to give him a big like. So Eddie looks over at the camera and gives him a big okay with a big smile on his hand. And like if you take a snapshot of this movie, that's the infectious energy. You just show me a picture of that.
Isn't that on the cover?
Well, no, he's got on the cover like he's got like a gun on the hood of a car.
That shot is on something. If you look this movie up, it might be the second one thing.
It's perfect. Like it to me.
Man, I'm looking at it right now. It's so funny.
And you're looking at it and tell me it didn't put a smile on your face.
For sure.
Looking at the camera and breaking the fourth wall or whatever is not normally smiled upon, but in comedy, I like it. And I like that Eddie did it.
I mean, Eddie Murphy in his best is just this contagious smile and the laugh. We haven't even talked about the laugh. Exactly. So.
We just mentioned his Saturday Night Live breaking the fourth wall, looking at the camera, breaking. This movie is actually a series of characters that he's playing. It is so perfect for Eddie because he makes all these little small performances that he carries through to get him into the next room or to get him out of a tight bind. Right. And that is like, Eddie's strong suit. He
talks to the security guard. He's like, "Hey, can you come here a second, please?"
Eddie doesn't like smoke his tobacco twice. Like all the things that he did on Saturday Night Live, he didn't just keep coming back. He didn't like do it. He was only there for a short period of time compared to especially People's runs now. And so this movie is the same thing. He hits some amazing notes. He doesn't drive him into the ground. He is such an adaptable, genuinely funny person. You just can't stop saying it. He really is a genius. I don't use that word lightly. I mean it for him. He's a comedic genius. Best scene. Justin, why don't you go first on this one? Best scene.
My best scene is it's the strip club scene, because I think this is when we get a little bit of Billy's personality comes out a little bit more. You see Axel trying to connect with these guys, and then on top of that, I didn't mention it during the soundtrack part, but they're playing a song by Vanity 6 called "Nasty Girl" on loop. And that song was actually written by Prince.
Yes.
And Vanity. I mean, she rest in peace. She actually she's not with us anymore. But that scene. There's like smoke in the air. You don't have automated lights. You have a guy literally holding the spotlight. Like, what happened to those jobs? Those jobs are gone. And I think then we get the bust, right? That sort of an unrelated bust of a robbery about to happen.
Yeah.
Would it have been better if whatever crime they come together on to stop together wasn't somehow involved with the rest of the plot?
No, probably. I don't know that it is.
I would argue that we need a little bit more on that part of the scale. But the idea that he stops MacGruber from shooting people with a shotgun, it felt good. I like that scene.
No. See, I think the whole point of that scene though was to build the relationship and the
they did cop work together.
Yeah. He proved himself that he was a really good detective because he saw the crime, and then you get to that scene where he's explaining himself that we've already talked about, where he says that was from the Super Cop scene.
Yep.
And then that's when Taggart says Axel deserves all the credit here, and that's when you know that he's a good.
And they even like him more for like trying to give him credit.
Let me remind y'all, I just picked it as my best scene. I'm not hating on the scene.
You're right.
It's my best scene. So you're like, no, you guys don't understand. I'm like, this is the one I like the best.
Yeah.
You're right.
All right,
Tommy.
I'll go next.
Yeah,
I'll go next. The scene where Eddie comes in. He talks about having the herpes simplex, gets let in there, throws the dude's bodyguard over the buffet. The guy gets the food all over his face, and then Victor tells him to stay down. And Eddie says, "Oh, that's nice." So he's like a dog. Does he sit and roll over too?
Yeah.
And like as he sits down after he makes this huge scene, he says like hi to the people sitting in the table beside him, and it's just awesome. That scene is, I mean, you get every bit of everything there. He gets arrested at that scene. He makes a scene. He really gets under the skin of the villain. I mean, come on, that's a pretty good scene.
My best scene's going to be when Taggart and Billy, well, Taggart in particular, is roped in by Billy, joining Axel to go into this big shootout. Man,
It's the music that gets you.
Yeah, Ebert slammed the ending of this movie, saying like this was just a dumb shootout, and this always happens now, and like you don't even have to write anything; you just insert a shootout. No, it's fun, and shootouts aren't normally always fun like this. And again, this is what I love about Hot Fuzz. It all builds up. It all builds up to this big crescendo. And in this case, it may not be as big of an, like, it may not be as exaggerated as that, but you have come to like these characters, and now they've come together, and it's very rewarding to see them fight together. So it's really rewarding. I disagree completely with Ebert. He's wrong on this one. Best wardrobe or makeup moment, Tommy.
Oh, well, that's easy. When he's walking through Beverly Hills and they pass by all of those characters, the guys with the leather jacket. I can't remember if this is the one with the pink lady with the dog, or if that's the second.
It's kind of a pale pink. I remember that one.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So that's that one where he's going through Beverly Hills and he's seeing all this stuff.
All the beautiful people. Yeah.
Yeah. That's mine.
Dustin, best wardrobe or makeup moment.
I was gonna pick one of Eddie Murphy's outfits, but I'm actually gonna go with Lisa Eilbacher, her makeup. Now, I watched this, I downloaded it, and I got like an Ultra HD version. And this is the earliest movie or TV show I've ever seen with, there's a very particular style of contouring for her face. Contouring became extremely popular here in the States like 10, 12 years ago. Something that all the kids do, all the YouTube video kids do. And I'd never seen it so like perfectly well done, 36 years ago? So it's kind of crazy. 38 years ago. So like that's the earliest I had ever seen it, and it was like, wow, this actress I had never seen in anything else. This looks great. So it's rare that I get an actual like makeup moment to comment on. So that's why I went with that.
It is good, and I'm gonna go with a just beat up Mumford T-shirt. It's just so good for Eddie's character. Like he's not trying to fit in. He is himself, and he is this fish out of water. Let's go with change one thing. Dustin, if you had to change one thing.
I think, this movie's great. I think we would still, I'd like to eliminate one level of the police bureaucracy. We have other detectives. We have like the A team and the B team detectives. We have then one level up is where we get to Bogomil. And then it's after Bogomil that we get to Chief Hubbard. And then we've also got the chief back in Detroit too. And I feel as if there was some way to somehow condense that, we could get more meat out of this movie. So, and I really did like the complete change of culture between the Detroit office and like the super up-to-date. It looks like Houston Mission Control in the Beverly Hills precinct. But we're in that office so much, I feel as if some of it gets a little bogged down. So that's what I would do, is maybe just eliminate one level, but I still think it worked.
If I could change one thing, I would just have Jeffrey come to Beverly Hills to aid in some way, to kind of, if they would have mixed him in, I think that could have aided a little bit to kind of Eddie's whole way he does detective work back in Detroit. I think adding him into the mix would have been, a really good add.
Besides adding Inspector Todd in, which is something I'd want to do, there's something even bigger, and this is just a sign of the times. Jenny Summers giving her something to do. I'm okay with her not being romantically involved with him. I am questioning what was typically done at the time. If was that done for race reasons, as I kind of mentioned earlier. But I'm not telling her to become romantically involved here. I'm saying she's smart, she's connected, she has information, and she gives him a little bit here and there, but I actually like her character, and more than just driving him around town in a nice car, I would like her to take a little piece of this, do a little something. Again, go outside the lines, and I like how Bogomil kind of covers up and even uses her in things and would get her off the line. I want to see her just, used a little more. She's cool. Get her involved.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Give the ladies something to do in the 80s and not just be pretty faces. And so often, this era of movie, of this type of movie, they just become very interchangeable.
Wasn't that a political slogan? I thought I remembered that. Give the ladies something to do in the 80s.
I don't know, but
No, it wasn't.
I made it sound bad. I was gonna say it doesn't sound as good when you read it back to me like that. I was gonna say you should write good characters for women. Is a better way of putting it. So, yeah, that's the better way of putting it. Yeah, I didn't say. When you read my own words back to me, I said, I don't like that. That's not what I meant. That's not right at all.
Whoops.
So, write better female characters. There you go. Worst ally ever.
You heard it here first on the round table.
Best quote, Tommy.
Yeah, Dustin, you can go first.
I'm going to go a little blue on this one, and it's not really about the language, it's just about the content, because I thought it's just out of nowhere, just a funny tangent that he went on when they're at the strip club. That scene. Billy, you don't have to be embarrassed if your dick gets hard. You're supposed to get hard. See? That's the whole object of this. Taggart's dick is hard, but he won't let you know because he's the boss. Boss's dick gotta stay limp, right? See, I ain't on duty, so my dick can be hard. Like, I died. It was so funny how long that went.
I think, and that relates to a lot of like people. I think a lot of people like that in the scene. I think that just that scene, makes this movie, that much better when they're there and the boss is there, and then you get the chief even talking about that scene and saying, "I can't believe you guys went."
And then let's put the same thing about that scene. He's never not moving in that scene. He's doing that shoulder shake the whole time he's talking to both Billy and Taggart. It's so good.
Yeah, seemingly a shameful situation to be in where you don't want to look at each other, probably, or But he's very casual about it. He's like, I'm having a lot of fun here, and that's very funny, making it awkward for the other people. And your long soliloquy there is definitely adding to the situational humor. It's funny to make people feel awkward in comedy, I think. Good choice there. Tommy, do you have a favorite quote?
From Detective Todd, when at the beginning when they're discussing the murder, and he's like, how do you know it was a professional hit? He's like, well, I didn't just walk out of the cotton fields.
Yeah.
Whoever shot him wasn't worried about your narrowed ass.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was just a classic, detective. It's a police movie. Detective Todd, who's Axel Foley's boss, is, schooling him on a murder scene, because Axel Foley doesn't really do murder. He's just a detective that he's not a homicide detective or anything like that. So, you've got the detective, his boss, basically schooling, and that's why I like that quote.
Yeah, this is great. And mine is thanks to you, Tommy. It's Stephen Berkoff's line, which, trust me, he doesn't technically deserve the best line of this movie, but it's because of you that I picked this line. And it's when Victor Maitland's character goes, "Detroit is a very violent city."
Yeah. Well, that really hits home though, because that one's 15 years ago, probably, right? When was that, like 2006?
Yep, something like that.
Man.
All right.
That's a good one.
If you had to rate this movie on a 5-star scale, half-star intervals, what would you rate this movie, Tommy?
5 stars?
I figured you were going to go this way. Dustin, what about you?
Come on, I'm over here. I get to select the movie. I mean, of course I'm going to give it 5 stars. I mean,
He's sitting in his car on the speakerphone of his phone because he couldn't get his headsets to work, watching a cat awkwardly creep him out. That's how much he loves this movie.
Exactly. Just to talk about it.
Yes. Dustin, how about you?
I'm going to come in at 4 stars here. I did really like it, and I wrote something peculiar. I'm going to say this is the best 4-star movie I've ever seen. Like, I was thoroughly enjoyed. Russell, I'll tell you, I don't rewatch every movie for this podcast. I watch it thoroughly, but it was like a joy to turn this one back on today when I learned we had an extra day to record. I'm like, this is going to be fun. I've got Patti LaBelle in my head right now. Like, there's things, I'd say some of the things that take away, I already covered. And then some things that are just small and cool. I thought not just the car chase at the beginning, but like the filming of the cars like doing their U-turns in the streets and how often they're on the streets, and even like the room service to the car, ragging on his car. There's all these little aspects are
Shrimp salad sandwich.
why was that so funny? Why was him describing Oh, I didn't even bring up
Because
guy.
they said he questioned him. I think the lieutenant questioned him. He was like, "Well, what
What
have?"
did you
He's
have
like,
for supper?
I think it was a shrimp salad
salad
sandwich. Sir.
And then the B team comes over and hands him some glasses with a banana on the nose.
Oh yeah.
Like, we didn't even mention it. Like, these little things are just gold, which just elevates it over any other 4-star movie. But some of the things I mentioned kind of keep it from hitting that 5-star range for me.
And you know what? I think what's going to happen for you is what happened for me, because I think you were probably right where I was. You continue to watch the other movies, and you're going to start to like it more, and you're going to go back and you're going to want to return to it. And the rewatchability, kind of get this like, oh, Eddie's going into the hotel, this is going to be funny kind of like thing. That payback of multiple rewatching is why I'm going 4.5. And someday I might be like Tommy. I might actually go full out 5 stars, because it's the rewatchability of this movie. I was sitting there going like, this was a delight to come back to. Why have I not watched this more since I had last seen it, whenever it was? It's time to, and I do crave to go watch the second one after talking about it here. Which, by the way, the second one's pretty good. I'm going to go with 4.5 is where I am. So, it's all right. Dustin, do you want to help me pick a movie for next time?
It's time. Let's do it.
All right, we've been going in 10-year increments, whether we realized it or not. So we did 74 with The Conversation. We did 84 here with Beverly Hills Cop. Let's go 10 years into the future on Oscar night in 1994. The nominees are option number 1, Pulp Fiction from 1994. The lives of 2 mob hitmen, a boxer, a gangster, and his wife, and a pair of diner bandits intertwine with 4 tales of violence and redemption. Option 2, speaking of redemption, The Shawshank Redemption from 94. 2 imprisoned men bond over a number of years, finding solace and eventual redemption through acts of common decency. And option 3, Forrest Gump. The presidencies of Kennedy, Johnson, and the Vietnam War, the Watergate scandal, and other historical events unfold the perspective of an Alabama man with an IQ of only 75, whose desire is to be reunited with his childhood sweetheart.
I wanted to do Forrest Gump, so it better not be Forrest Gump.
Dustin, what'll it be?
Is this the hardest choice I've been given? Perhaps. Option 2, Shawshank Redemption.
That's a relief.
We went around with like Beverly Hills Cop theme in our head all week long this week. We will then have Morgan Freeman narrating every minor thing that you do in your head. Like, so you're going to have like Russell Guest went over to the waffle maker and made himself a waffle. He flipped it over. It's just like, you just imagine Morgan Freeman narrating your life and you feel a little bit more significant. So, Tommy, thank you for coming on. And everybody check out his Braveheart episode. He was great on that too.
Oh, well, of course. Yes. I appreciate coming on here. It's always a delight.
All right. Well, thank you so much, man. And thank you all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. So subscribe, rate, and review to the show on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast. Follow the show. Those downloads help us. They make us feel good. They keep the show alive. Give us a like on Facebook. Follow us at Twitter at @movie_retro. Email the show if you'd like at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. And providing and producing this podcast is fun, but not free. So we invite you to support the show at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/Retro Movie Roundtable. Any contributions you make will go towards making the show better for you, the listeners, and are much appreciated. So, as always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Dustin?
You won't have eyes tonight. You won't have ears or a tongue. You will wander the underworld, blind, deaf, and dumb, and all the dead will know this is Hector, the fool who thought he killed Achilles.